Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday evening, March 3rd, 2025. It is 7 p.m., and this is a regular meeting of the Gorham Planning Board. Would you please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please silence your cell phones? Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson. Mr. Delaney.
Here.
Ms. Nichols. Here.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in our packet we have approval of the February 3rd, 2025 Planning Board minutes. I look to our Secretary, Mr. Burrows, please.
I found only one minor flaw. Otherwise, found everything to be accurate to the best of my knowledge and well presented. The only flaw is the spelling of David Walsh's name on page 6. William Benson moved and Davis Walsh. It should be David. Other than that, I open it to any other member to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. That's the highlighted section in the second paragraph. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Frank, please.
Thank you. General comment about the level of detail, the nice level of detail, and they're beautifully written. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Are there any other comments, edits, questions, comments, suggestions, ideas? Is a motion, please, with that correction?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the Planning Board meeting minutes of February 3rd with revision as noted by our Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second, please?
Mr. Frank, second.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Moving along, Chairman's report. I would like to make a personal observation. I had noted recently on the social media thing that Mr. Sean Frank of Sebago Techniques is retiring. Mr. Frank has come to us many, many times, represented many, many others in these projects. I wish him well in his retirement. It says in this social media thing that he will continue to share his wisdom as a member of the Board of Directors with Sebago Techniques. So congratulations, Mr. Sean Frank, on your great career. That's all I have. Any questions, comments on that? Moving along, please. Committee reports. Ordinance Review Committee, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, Ordinance Committee just completed a second meeting on parking revisions, and we're going to continue that work at our next meeting. And the other thing is we had discussed a butter for notifications, which is item 6 on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, Mr. Frank.
We did not meet.
You did not meet. Thank you, sir. Administrative Review Report, please, looking to Planning Department. Who wants to carry the weight on that one?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the Administrative Review Committee reviewed 3 projects, one on County Road. That project review of that was tabled pending further information requested from the applicants. It will be reviewed again on March 5th. 11 Bartlett Road, a project was approved to build a pole barn by Grandin Aggregates. And on 5 Shaw's Mill Road, a review of that request was tabled pending further information requested by the applicant.
Thank you very much for that report. Moving along, please. Item 1 is a public hearing, zoning map amendment, district changes. Proposed amendment to the zoning map to change map 22 lot 7 on Washburn Road from the suburban residential district to the South Gorham Crossroads district. I look to the Planning Department to guide us on this, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this item is on for a public hearing this evening. It was on the agenda for the previous meeting. It's a request shown in a map here, which has been revised based on information provided at the previous meeting. where Lot 22-7 was split, and only the northern portion of the lot is proposed for rezoning. So we've included that revised map based on that information that was provided. And what they're looking to do, just to recap, they're looking to change the zoning from suburban residential to South Gorham Crossroads. That is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The zoning for South Gorham Crossroads allows for a greater variety of uses, including commercial uses and greater density than the suburban residential zone. And with that, happy to take any questions that may come up in the discussion or from public hearing.
Thank you very much. We should have a map in front of us outlining these two things, and we, as discussed, we met last month and discussed this. Is the developer here that would like to speak to this?
Thank you, sir. Gary Jordan, owner of the thank you. Gary Jordan, owner of the northern lot, also resident in Gorham over on Sunrise Lane. So as we mentioned last time, the primary goal is to, as Damon mentioned, was to switch this just the northern portion of 22-7. When the new map lot numbers come in April, hopefully this will be revised and we'll have a separate lot number for that. But we would like to change that to the mixed use, which will allow for, Gorham South Road Crossings to allow for mixed use. This only applies to just this portion of this land. You know, I definitely, as an owner in this area, I know there's a lot of other residents that are single-family houses. They would obviously probably like to retain that. I will probably introduce Kathy right after this just to make sure. But from my perspective, I'm just looking for my lot, pending any questions.
Members of the board, any questions? Mr. Walsh, please.
Just point of order, this is a public hearing.
Well, I will after he finishes up. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you. Planning, I just want to reiterate, I'm sorry, Mrs. Nichols, please.
I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification of, I see only 22-7, and then I see proposed rezoning. So I'm assuming it's what looks to me like it's the south portion of 22-7 if those two were connected, but I'm confused about what was original. Okay.
No. So I was looking to the planning. If I remember correctly from last month, the number will be assigned by planning department, or we can't say for certain right now what that number is. Is that correct?
We don't have that number. It's provided by assessing.
Okay. So we're calling it the north section of 22-7,
Correct.
and it will have some other
Yes.
designation
Yes.
at some point.
It will have a new map and lot.
Does that answer?
Well, what I'm seeing on this map of 22-7 is what you're considering the southern part of 22-7 that is not being considered.
Correct. That's suburban
So
residential.
it's just that rezoning section that's highlighted. Okay, so that whole thing used to be 22-7, now it's split, and that's the portion that's being reviewed.
Yes, that's correct.
I have another question then. When I look at this other map, the comprehensive plan has all of that as being proposed as South Gorham Crossing. Yes?
That's correct.
Okay, so the comprehensive plan already is moving that way where that wants that whole piece to be coming under that South Gorham. So this is consistent with comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows?
Yes, just to follow up on Ms. Nichols' comment, I think that when we propose a motion, we'll need to specify that it is the north portion of Lot 22-7, although I don't see that in the motions as stated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can sit
Appreciate
down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this item number 1? So please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name's Kathleen West. I own the southern part of that number. the lot got divided. Just a point, it's not Washburn Road, it's Washburn Drive, so you might want to correct that in your notes, or whoever puts that down. There might be another Washburn Road somewhere, I don't know. But that's Washburn Drive. I guess, I'm not sure if this is the place to bring this up. I picked this map up today when I came here that shows the comprehensive plan. We were here a couple years ago, the whole neighborhood, and we discussed not having our neighborhood changed in the zoning. I retained what I retained of my property so that my daughter could build a house out back if that zoning changes. Then I'm not going to be able to do what I wanted to with my land. And that's why part of the neighborhood, fought against that zoning change. I'm not sure, maybe you could direct me to who I speak to about that our neighborhood did not want to be changed in the zoning. And I know the comprehensive plan wants to do what they want, but we did fight it, and they said they wouldn't change it, and we were taken out of it, and now it sounds like they're putting it back in again. So I'm just wondering if this is going to, what this is going to mess with. Do we need to come back and fight this again? Go ahead.
Would you like to address that?
If you would like me.
Please, yes, better than me.
The comprehensive plan is written and adopted, and it is what it is right now. Those are the words that are in it. We'll do another comprehensive plan. At that time, given what everyone has expressed as their concerns and opinions during that process, then we may or may not change it. We don't know. It's up to the town as a whole.
So it's not up to the people that live there, it's just up to the comprehensive plan? They change it no matter what? Again, I've already come forward with this a couple of years ago, and the neighborhood came and we all said we did not want it changed because a lot of us owned enough land to put another house for potentially a family member or whatever. But I know with this zoning change, it will make it so there can't be single-family houses added.
And the
And
proposal,
both of these are dead-end roads. Both of these are, Straw Road and Washburn Drive are both neighborhoods. And quite a few people have enough land to put another house in, but nobody wanted apartment buildings put in that area. And I don't have a problem with the land I sold to Gary, because when I sold it, I knew I sold it and he could do what he wanted with it. But I know I wanted to do what I did, kept my land to do. I don't want to be told now I can't do that. I have horses, I have farm animals, pigs, chickens, the whole bit. I don't want to be like, oh, you can't have those anymore. I'm wondering if my land can be, and I will be informing my other neighbors of this going on, if I'm going to be able to be grandfathered, or am I going to be told I can no longer put up a new barn for my farm animals, or I can't build a house out back for my daughter? Can anybody answer that? I mean, does this grandfather me in, or does it not grandfather me in if they change the zoning?
this property is not changed right now.
Right, correct. I want to rail this in. The public hearing is really on the
Right.
item.
Right.
I know that.
You're bringing a valid argument, and no one's,
Just send me in the direction, and I will go there instead. That's okay. I didn't want to hijack this meeting. I'm already here, so.
no, respectfully, that's fine. We appreciate your comments, but I'm looking to the planning department to carry the heavy weight on this. And
There's no proposal to change anything other than the northern part right now.
Right now, yeah. Okay, so should I come and talk to the planning guy tomorrow?
If you would like, please come and talk to us tomorrow.
Terrific, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And again, it's Washburn Drive, not Washburn Road, just so you don't have to fix it later on.
It's a typo on this, it's correct on the map.
Terrific, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to talk to this issue? Anyone else on item 1? District changes? I'll declare the public hearing closed. 7:20-ish. Members of the board. My opinion is we had a great discussion on this last month, and this is a continuation. We know we wanted to have this on the agenda. And to Mr. Burrows' point, we may want to I won't say fix, but edit the motion. Any other discussion with anybody, for anybody, to anybody? Mr.
Chairman,
Walsh?
If I may, I would move to, I'll make sure I want to get the right motion here. Is the first one? Or no?
Second one's to go
Second
to
one,
the
right?
town council.
Yeah. Move to send the proposed zoning map amendment change the zoning of the north section, newly defined lot of map 22, lot 7, from suburban residential district to South Gorham Crossroads District to the town council with a recommendation for adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
I
Ms.
will
Nick-
second that.
Thank you,
Barbara
Ms. Nichols. Any other discussion? On the first motion, my personal opinion is I don't think these have to go to our subcommittees. I think we've had lengthy discussion, is my opinion, last month and continuing this evening. So I think the motion is valid as it's presented with the addition of the north section. Yes, Ms. Nichols?
I just wanted to comment that it was extremely helpful to have this map included in our packet, just to understand a bigger picture of it. So thank you for that.
So we had a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Are we doing okay? Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to item 2, public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment. Amend road standards. Proposed amendments to the Land Use and Development Code for technical updates to Chapter 2, Section 2-5, minimum standards for the design and construction of streets and ways. I look to my right.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Town staff had been asked to review road standards for the town. This review includes both design standards and the application of waivers. Revisions included here primarily of a technical nature with changes, some changes to formatting. Adjustments are also recommended to the ADT triggering requirements. So there are some road standards listed in this memo, and then the road standards that are being updated are reflected on Table 1.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. I have a question on the table, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
And it's, my craziness. ADT, average daily traffic.
Yes.
Is that vehicle count?
Yes, correct.
So when we see 2,000 plus, 2,000 vehicles, okay, thank you. As opposed to all the other ones seem to be feet, maybe percentages. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this street classification and design standard? So please go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Going once, going twice. I declare the public hearing is closed, 7:22 p.m. Thank you. Members of the board. We have a chart, a new one. Yes, please, Mr. Walsh.
May I make a motion?
Fire away.
Move to send the proposed zoning amendment regarding road standards to the town council with a recommendation for adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
Right?
Mr. Frank, thank you. Just to make sure that we have this standard here, everyone's comfortable with it. Highlighted, red, easily read, no pun intended. Motion and a second. Concerns. Any other discussion? Mr. Frank, please.
Just my usual preference for simplicity and striking things out. So I like this.
Thank you. Yes, I think it adds clarity so we can understand what the revisions are going to be. And then we will amend it as appropriate in the upper right-hand corner at some point. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the motion and second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Nice work, Mr. Norton. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to item 3. Item 3 is a discussion. preliminary subdivision and private way, Nicole and Gerald Registe. I should have it by now, thank you. Laney Lane subdivision, a request for preliminary subdivision and private way extension reviews off Wood Road, zoned rural, map 54, lot 9-3, map 54, lot 9-301. The applicant is represented by Mr. Peter D'Alfonso, PE of D'Alfonso Engineering. Would planning like to kick it off, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this is actually the fourth time this item's been before the planning board, the third time looking at it for preliminary approval. So to reiterate, the applicant's proposing to construct a 5-lot subdivision served by a 975-foot private way. The planning board also did a site walk on the property on October 22nd of last year. So since the second time this was before the board for preliminary review, the applicant has made a number of revisions to the plan to address staff, peer review, and planning board comments. I'm happy to report they appear to have addressed substantially all of the comments that have been made. They have, just to run through, the lot lines have been adjusted. All now meet dimensional zoning requirements. The Class A soil surveys have been completed. Homeowners Association documents have been submitted and reviewed by the town attorney. Nitrate plume analysis has been provided. Culverts have been adjusted to meet town requirements for it to be at least 15 inches. Information has been provided documenting financial capacity. Additional information on that was requested, and that was provided today, and they have met that requirement. As such, the applicant is requesting that the planning board waive the requirement for preliminary approval prior to granting final approval. That's something the board may consider doing. There's waiver language included here should the board determine to take that action. One thing to note, there, as discussed previously, the driveway, a driveway was constructed prior to approval being granted, which it was built to private way standards to some degree, although that needs to be reviewed further. As such, we are suggesting a condition of approval be added such that that is constructed as per the plans that are approved by the planning board prior to issuance of any building permit. So that's something we suggest the board review, and if it'd like to, it can make that condition of approval given the out of sequence construction that occurred on that. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
You sure? I know it's been round robin. Thank you very much. Very articulate. I appreciate it. Yes, as I scan this real quickly, all the yellow seems to have disappeared. There's a few things, but congratulations on getting a lot more work done. Would you like to address us, please, Mr. D'Alfonso?
Good evening. I'm Peter D'Alfonso. I'm a civil engineer. I don't have a lot to add. Damon has done a very good job, and I don't think I need to take up time repeating what he said, but I'm here to, answer any questions, and hopefully there aren't many, and we can move on and get this project approved.
I would concur. I look to the board if we have any questions for Mr. D'Alfonso or any clarifications. I mean, there's 26 pages here. I hope you've had a chance to review it, but there's still a few yellow things we need to review. Mr. Walsh, please.
Yeah, I do have one question for you. There were a number of comments provided by abutters, neighbors, and have how have those been addressed, or have they been addressed?
Okay, I understand that we're working with the abutter to solve his issues with drainage. Once the road is completed to the design, the way it's designed, the drainage will be taken care of, and they're going to set up an agreement before we get going as to how they're going to work with it and allow us to do a little grading on their side of the line.
Yep, I'm seeing some heads shaking in the back of the room. I assume those are the butters. This is not a public hearing, but, so I'm,
If I may, if I throw this in, I'm going to look to planning, Mr. Norton, perhaps. My understanding is this was built to a driveway standard, but we want this to become a private way, which has a completely different standard. So once this is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, once this, you're shaking your head, once this is approved, if it becomes approved, when it becomes approved, the drawings are indicating a private way, then that standard is enforced. This entire path could be completely torn up and have to be redone to meet a different standard. Is that close?
So the reality is we don't know what was constructed. So if this was done in a sequence where the raw land there was a 2 to 6 lot private road proposed, there would have been the design standards that are in the land use ordinance that would be proposed just like it is on this plan. However, there is a driveway out there to which we don't know what standard that was built to. So Damon's point, adding that additional condition of approval is basically saying that we know something's out there, you're proposing the 2 to 6, we need to make sure that the 2 to 6 is, what that road structure is before we start issuing building permits.
And Terry Deering mentioned that during the sidewalk as well.
Correct.
Sure, of course, going across. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
it does, but I'm just still have concerns that we have neighbors who obviously, I don't believe are fully informed of what the impacts are going to be, and will there be any impacts on the neighbors? Because obviously we had, the applicant has had some pretty upset neighbors about the impacts on their property and believe, from what I read in prior statements, that their property was being impacted. So it sounds like that has not changed at this point.
Colonel?
So my question that amplifies or follows on to what was said, the private way construction, well, I see we have a motion here for private way approval. So does that have to be done as a separate process to any approval of a preliminary subdivision or final subdivision approval? Or is
Yes.
that included as part of it?
It is a separate plan, and it's a separate approval, so you vote for them separately, if you get my point.
So should it be done before?
You can do either one. It doesn't matter the order that you vote on it.
But if we approve the subdivision for approval and don't approve the private way, then it kind of makes the subdivision a moot point.
True.
So I would think we would have to vote the private way approval first. And are
Although-
we asked to approve the construction of that? Or are we approving the fact that it exists and meets current standards, and that's what we're approving?
You are approving a plan that shows what they are going to construct. The fact that they already did something for construction is separate from the plan. They're going to have to fix anything on site to meet this plan. Because you're approving the plan, not the actual construction in the field, as it is today. And to Chuck's point, they may have to rip up the entire thing to meet this plan.
And it would also have to then address any drainage concerns with the butters? Does that then become part of the plan to build and get approval for a private way?
What you're approving includes the stormwater, which is the drainage patterns.
Right, but, and then the town has to go out and approve it after the construction and say that, yes, it has met all the standards, and that all will have to be done before any housing permits are issued and any additional work can be done on the property.
Yes, if you add that condition of approval in.
Right, assuming that that's added up.
So,
If you don't mind. So Terry Deering is pointing out all the culvert diameters were the wrong diameter, perhaps.
Right.
That was his, initial pulling a tape measure real quickly, digging down. And so I guess in one respect, there's something there, but we should ignore it because it's not on any drawing.
yeah.
What we're looking at is this drawing, and this is what it's going to be built to. So all the culverts may be pulled up and redesigned, relocated, et cetera, to take care of the stormwater, et cetera. Yes, Mr. Walsh, please.
So just to help me out, answer my original question about the abutters, and I think Bill got it to some extent. We're asked to approve this plan, and how will the plan be enforced? Because I think that's going to be a major concern to the abutters, that this plan will be enforced, so there'll be no impact on their property. Will that be by the code enforcement, or will that be by your engineers?
So the two options the town has is either using our consultant engineering firm, Wright Pierce,
Wright
or
Pierce,
doing
yeah.
it in-house, which would be
Okay.
myself and the stormwater compliance
Okay.
officer. And that has yet to be determined yet.
Yeah, I just think that would be hopefully reassuring to the abutters that there is going to be some eyes and ears on this thing.
Correct.
We do inspections on all private roads, and we also take a performance guarantee for that road. So let's say, something happens and they can't finish it halfway through.
Right.
The town will take that performance guarantee and finish it.
Yeah, good. And, and I know these things. I just want to go on the record here, and it's obvious I think we have some people here who are interested in that.
Ms. Nichols, please.
Well, I have a question that goes back to originally in 2022, when I was not on the board. When the plan originally came to the planning board, these units, these lots were going to come off Daisy Lane instead of having
Yes.
their own roadway. And why did that change?
That changed because Jarrell doesn't have the legal ability to use Daisy Lane. The original developer of that subdivision kept those rights when he sold the land. So,
Okay, so it's not an option.
No, it's not
to
an
go
option.
off Daisy Lane, which is why we flipped. So I apologize, I just needed to kind
That's
of
okay.
understand that. And then the other point is that what we're looking at the sites, the 5 lots, and approving the plan for those lots, and approving a roadway that meets this standard, and with the understanding that that is a performance standard. If that roadway doesn't meet that standard, the whole thing is going to blow up until the roadway meets the standard to get up there, correct?
Correct. What I will say, and it's not going to be pretty. It's very regretful that anything was done. It is very regretful. There was a lot of money invested in this. I'm sure that there was a lot of money paid to have this thing done. But the cart came before the horse. And with good intentions, thinking everything was going to be okay, it's regretful that it went forward the way it did. This document is going to be the de facto standard. Anything else there right now may or may not stay. It may be completely torn up. Mr. Norton, you agree?
Correct.
It may or may not.
It may or may not.
Yeah.
And if there's something, just some additional context to help the board here. Typically, the way it works is that building permits can be issued during the construction of the private way if its access is sufficient for emergency and construction vehicles. And then the last certificate of occupancy for the development is issued or is held up prior to completion of the road, the final completion of the road.
But that's
In this
not the way
case-
this, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we are suggesting that you add some additional guarantee that the road is constructed properly before any building permits are issued. That's the context to help the board with
Sure.
that condition of approval.
Thank you. Mr. Burrows?
I have a draft of how we would amend the motion that would possibly satisfy the condition that we're looking for. Is it appropriate to,
Are we there yet, or
Not yet.
still want to hammer this out? Mr. Walsh?
I have one question for staff. Are you comfortable with granting final, waiving preliminary with this project?
Yes, they've done every single thing that
Okay.
we've asked. They've submitted everything.
Thank you.
That's reassuring for me, myself. Is there anyone else? Any other questions, any other concerns? I know the abutters are here. I hope you've been hearing this message. I hope there can be some good handshaking there at some point. I have to believe that it will be done.
Is there no opportunity for the abutters to address the planning board before you deliberate and vote tonight? I would only ask for 30 seconds to correct something.
Don't say 30 seconds, because I'll hold you to that. And I am the one that would hold. Please, members of the board, would you like to hear from the abutters?
Yes.
Census, you have 30 seconds. Yes, please, and name and address for the record.
My name is Tom Faderly. I'm with Archipelago Law out of Portland, Maine, and I'm representing two of the abutters who are here in the back. They're immediately adjacent to the east of this property. What was represented is that there has been conversation about the impacts that the neighbors have already experienced. There hasn't been any discussion. And what we would ask of this planning board is, in light of the fact that they got their sequencing wrong, and why they did that, I don't know, but they shouldn't have. And when they did it, it's impacted my client's property. In light of the fact that they did that, they don't deserve a shortcut in your process that would enable you to do preliminary and final in a single night. What we would ask is, if you're going to move forward with preliminary approval, also have your final approval, and in the interim, let the applicant do what the applicant just said to you, which was they were going to reach out to the neighbors and try and work through a resolution. Now you would have time to do that, and we would have the ability to talk to them, and at final plan, hopefully we could all come back and say we've reached an accord. If not, we'd ask simply that you hear from us the impacts that we've incurred to date, and are concerned for future impacts related to this 975-foot driveway / road that is right up against the property line. Thank you. I took more than 30 seconds. I apologize.
You owe me time.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I'd like to address a couple of things. I believe inherently that the board is very, very sensitive to this and how it played out. It's all behind us. It's happened. So all we're doing is hoping, in good faith, that it will go forward in a positive vein. But we have heard this 4 times. At one point, no disrespect if you've been paying attention, there were probably 100 yellow line items here, and we were not in favor of any of this. Mr. Delphonse has gone back, and there may be 1 or 2 now that will be a condition of approval. But whatever the decision of the board is, I personally am okay with going to final, because all of the other things that we have been asking for have been met.
Unless, Mr. Chair, unless you asked for them to work with the neighbors, because they haven't done that at all, and they just represented to you that they had, and they haven't. So I'm asking, what's the harm in sticking with your normal process of a preliminary approval subject to final, There's still some loose ends in their plan, as noted by your fire chief, by your conservation commissioner in notes. They've gotten narrowed down to some finer points, but not from the neighbor's perspective. The big issue is still standing out there, which is they built a big road without any permits right up against our property line. We're just asking, stick with the normal process, and you'll be able to hear from us in a month's time that, yes, we've talked and there's a way to reach an accord, or there isn't. And then you can make your final decision. That's what we would respectfully request.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Members of the board. Please, Mr. Frank.
Question for staff, really. For a final approval of anything, do we normally do that without having a public hearing?
For subdivision, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Subdivisions do not require a public hearing.
That was kind of addressed the question the attorney raised there. Thank you.
Ms. Nichols.
If I could just briefly, hopefully, state, as we've been moving through, it's been clear that the cart was put before the horse. The driveway was a snafu. It should have been right from the beginning, the whole thing thought through. It wasn't. Now there's a very well-defined, they've worked really hard on making sure they've checked off all of our requirements, all of our requests, and all looks good. And the issue with the abutters is also the road. It's where that road is, and everything is contingent on that road meeting all of the requirements, which include appropriate runoff, which has already been addressed in our checklists, and acknowledged that some of the drainage pipes need to be larger. And all that, in my view, it seems like all that's being addressed. I don't feel uncomfortable going forward with their plan, knowing that that road is going to be, it's not going to happen unless it happens properly, and that we are on target with it, maybe even more so than normal because of the way it happened. That thumb's going to be on it to make sure it's done right, and knowing that there are concerns of runoff of some abutters, we want those folks to make sure they're heard, and that's addressed. And so I personally don't have a problem with moving forward, and I feel confident and comfortable with the fact that the road is going to come as the next stage. And nothing can happen in final. I mean, it'd be foolish to start building houses until you know you've got a way to access them. So.
Thank you. Any other members of the board? Mr. Walsh?
Well, two things. Well, one is we've heard from a representative of the abutters. Do we want to hear from the applicant in response to that?
Consensus of the board? Yay, nay? Just a consensus, not a vote.
Sure, it wouldn't hurt.
Wouldn't hurt. Would you like to address us, please? Name and address for the record. Thank you.
Jarrell Regis, 102 Wood Road. As far as addressing my neighbors on the driveway that I've built already, I haven't been able to address anything because I haven't been able to finish the road until I have final approval. I have spoken to them, and I have records of us conversing on what their concerns are, which I have taken heart, and I am going to address everything, all their concerns, to my ability, according to our plan that we have for the subdivision. So I don't think there's any concern with me not dealing with anything that needs to be done, because I feel like we spent a decent amount of time to figure out how this drainage is supposed to be, and I think it's to town spec, and I think it's a good plan. So.
Mr. Burrows?
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing why the abutter feels like they have not been included in the conversations.
Including in the conversation with me?
Right, it seems like they have been left out of the process.
I think it's more of a condition where my hands are tied because I can't do any work to the road until I have a final approval. So I can't give them any answers and whether or not like I'm going out there to do work to the road and be like, hey, this is what I'm about to do. This is what needs to be done. And I have the ability to do it because now I have final approval. So, I mean, I can't really tell them anything until I have the green light to go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Nichols?
So if I was your abutter,
Ms. Nichols, could you?
yes, oops, sorry.
Thank you.
So if I was your abutter and you said to me, I can't really say anything until I get final approval, I think I'd be a little nervous about that.
It's not that I am telling them that I can't say anything or do anything. What I said is that if there's concerns where there are, that I will take care of them. I don't have a problem taking care of them at all. That's not a problem at all.
I think maybe what's more important is just knowing that they're being heard, that you're hearing what their concerns are, that, yeah, I hear it, I understand, trying your best to understand it, and then together figuring out the best way to approve it. But to me, if they're not, it sounds like they're not feeling that they're heard. And that's so important, is to just know that they know you hear what they're concerned about and that you want to address it because you don't want neighbors
Agreed.
who are upset with you.
Agreed.
You know?
Let's
Let's not politicize this.
Oh.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think the message has been loud and clear. I don't mean, everyone on the same page with that? I don't want to belabor it, to say that something was done wrong. This drawing is what we're debating. Unfortunately, there is something that's there, we can't change that. I too would be upset, but that's all. Anyone from the board, any questions? Yes, Mr. Bowers, please.
This is actually for Carol. Is there any obligation on the part of the applicant to inform their neighbor, or do they not need to do that as long as they're following the code?
Well, technically, the town informs the neighbor because we send out the notices to them, so they know about the hearing, they can come and listen. They came to the site walk and discussed things there with the board. So that is sort of what's in the ordinance. That is what's required in the ordinance. To go any further than that is a choice of the board. In some instances, boards, we want to have trees put as a buffer or something like that. This is a little bit different. It's a different scenario, but the ordinance already took care of that notification part, and so that they know and they're here. So that's a good sign. They're engaged.
I'm satisfied with that. So the applicant did meet the intent of the ordinance.
Yes.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, on page 3 is a motion to approve a requested waiver. We heard some pros and cons of that. We heard from staff. Please reiterate, you are in favor of a final subdivision approval.
Yes.
And I said I concur because these 1 or 2 items of yellow will be condition of approval.
Yes.
Thank you. Members of the board, what is your pleasure? Are you in favor of going from preliminary directly to final? Mr. Frank?
Question. If we approve the waiver, to grant preliminary and final at the same meeting, that being tonight. Does that compel us to grant both at the meeting, or does it leave it with an option? I think it's an option.
I'm sorry. I know you're looking at me and talking to me, but I didn't,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'll talk to the mic. If we approve the waiver that allows us to grant preliminary and final at tonight's meeting, we say, okay, we can, does it mean we can do that or we must do that? I think it gives us the option, because when I look at, I think it's page 26, there are three motions, two of which I'm concerned with here. The first motion for preliminary approval, the second motion is for preliminary and final. So does approving the waiver lock us out of, say, just the first one for preliminary only?
If you grant a waiver, there's the expectation that you will be granting preliminary and final in the same meeting.
Is,
But you don't have.
is the motion on page 3 then a moot point if we simply go right to page 26 and do both preliminary and final? I'm not a lawyer, I'm just,
You have to waive the ordinance requirement to do it, because the ordinance is very specific. It's supposed to be 2 separate meetings. And why that is a good question, but the point is, they have met every single thing in the ordinance to grant preliminary and final. They have met everything, except for one thing, which is to label the plan correctly, which is something that is very easy to do, and when they give us the draft for you to sign, it will be labeled correctly. Because that's one of the checks we do. We go through the entire plan to make sure it's doesn't have any misspellings or whatever. We literally scour it before you sign it. So it would be very unusual for this board to hold up the plan for that kind of editing.
if I'm interpreting this on page 3, there is a request for a waiver. That's one item. Page 26 is a series of other items. That's the way I read this.
Correct.
Okay. Does that help, Mr. Frank? I understand.
I'm not sure.
What I heard you say was, if we agree on 3, does it force us to do something on 26? Is that an interpretation?
That was basically my question. If we agree that we may approve both preliminary and final tonight, my concern or my question was, does that mean we are forced to do it? Carol said it's, what was the word you used, customary, or the expectation is that we will. So.
But I think that depends on what the final vote is. So we could grant the waiver on one hand to say we would, but then when we go to the final vote, that's what's going to be determining whether, does that help?
Yeah, because I in my weekend, just want to back up, in my weekend review of this, I noted a lot of little ticks. Most of them, as Carol said, they're documentary things, just things that need to be cleaned up on documents, and all the other stuff. And until I heard Carol tonight say that she's happy with what this is, my inclination at 1 minute to 7 tonight was that I would, on page 26, that I would do a yes for the private way, because without the private way, nothing else can happen in terms of further development. And then I was leaning toward yes for preliminary, but not for preliminary and final. Now, I'm modifying my position based on assurances from Carol that this is pretty good for tonight's purposes. So I'm okay to move forward with everything.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Colonel?
Yeah, so if we approve preliminary subdivision approval and approved the private way for approval, could the applicant then go ahead and start work on the private way? Or not until I see
With
the
some
engineer
things-
shaking his head,
There's some
so.
things after. There is some after approval things that happen before they go out in the field and do any work.
That requires the final to be approved.
Yes.
Okay,
One of the
so-
things is you have to sign the plan.
Okay, so that's great, and that's exactly why I asked, because I would have been inclined to have approved the private way, approved the preliminary, and let the work start on the private way, because to me, the road is the issue.
Yeah.
And the only way to start to work on this road and fix any issues is to pass it, so they can start to work on the road. So that's where I'm at.
And that pretty much mirrors what I was trying to get across, so thank you. First.
Mr. Walsh?
I have
Thank you.
just a point on something not related to the motion, but there was a comment in the latest staff notes that said that we should.
Please, what page, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, on 9 of 26. Bullet point in the center of the page under roads. It is recommended the planning board add a condition of approval stating that the total number of units be served by the private way is 6, inclusive of any ADUs. We have not discussed that, and is that something that should be added? I mean, if it's stated here, it seems reasonable.
That is included as condition 18.
Oh, it already is, okay.
It was in the draft from
Okay.
the last meeting.
Been so many dates on this one, all right, that's fine, good.
And what that does is clarify what's already in the ordinances
Yeah.
regarding the number of dwelling units tied
Thank
to
you.
the private way capacity.
Gentlemen, I'm guessing you can sit down. I'm sorry to keep you standing there. Unless there are any more other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, where are we?
Ready to make a motion?
Ms. Nichols, please.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the requested waiver for the Laney Lane subdivision at map 54, lot 9-3, from chapter 3, section 3-3 and 6.5, to grant preliminary and final subdivision approval at the same meeting.
There's a motion. Is there a second, please?
Mr. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Frank. I think we all understand what we're doing here. Is there any other discussion we need? We good? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh is opposed. That's one hurdle. If I can call on you, you mentioned you had a couple of things you were looking through this. Would you want to share them with us, or are you good right now the way things are going?
Oh, there were about 8 pages of where I made little blue marks about the things, and like I said before, they're mostly document corrections and updates and missing places for us to sign and stuff like that. And it was just, last month, you know, I had a very long laundry list of stuff that would have been conditions of approval. And it was just, in my view, and I think in our view too, it was too much. So we said, you got to come back with a less yellow. And they have. So I was looking at the little things that still needed to be updated, and they were, like I said, mostly just paperwork stuff.
But do you want to share them with us, or are they I don't mean to be disrespectful. Are they nitpicking, but it could be important?
It's nitpicking.
Okay, I respect that, but I don't want to disrespect you either. If you,
No.
everyone has a need to be heard.
I will speak up when I see the need. But
Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, folks, yes, Colonel,
Mr.
please.
Chair, so I understand that the first thing we need to do is to vote on this. At least for me, I would like to take the vote on the private way because I think that is contingent on everything else. So I would like to make a motion to grant 2 to 6 lot private way approval for Laney's Lane subdivision located on map 54, lot 9-3 in the rural zoning district based on findings of facts and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
I don't believe we have any amendments, correct? That's a motion by Colonel Benson. Anyone else? Please, Mr. Burrows?
I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. So this is a private way approval motion. Is there any other discussion on this? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Mr. Walsh? Thank you. Mr. Walsh is opposed. What's the sentiments? Are we looking at preliminary subdivision approval?
Do we have any amendments?
Again, for me, the way to address the issues is to have a plan and to do the road that addresses it, and the road doesn't get started unless we have final subdivision approval. So that's where I'm at for this. And I invite abutters, anyone interested, to continue to send in comments and to work with the town to make sure that the engineer is involved and going out and doing the proper inspections and if the road meets all the requirements. I invite all of that, but I think the only way to move it forward is to approve it. So that's where I am.
Well
I would
said.
like to vote. I would like to have the vote on it.
Well said, thank you.
And chronologically, the private way approval is coming first.
Right. It's a condition of.
If it helps the board, if you include condition number 19, that would require the road be fully constructed before any other building permits are issued.
Oh, I wouldn't consider voting in favor without condition 19.
Okay, just for the record, I want to make sure we include that then.
Well, as we're saying, conditions of approval as written by the town planner. So we're under the impression that 19 is included.
Thank you.
Is that fair to say?
Where does it say conditions of approval?
Number 19 is the private way shall be completed and reviewed for adherence to the approved private way plan prior to the issuance of building permits for housing. All right, Colonel, you have a motion?
Move to grant preliminary and final subdivision approval for Laney Lane subdivision located on map 54, lot 9-3 in the rural zoning district based on findings of facts and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh is opposed. All right, we hope to hear good news about this project as it moves forward. How are we doing? We need to take a break. Anyone shake their legs out? We all set? Keep going? Go. Do you want a break? Okay, thank you. We're going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4, ladies and gentlemen, item 4, discussion, sketch plan review, John D., County Road mixed-use development, a proposal to construct a mixed-use development on County Road with 2 commercial lots and 6 residential house lots containing duplexes, zoned South Gorham Commercial Corridor, with contract zone proposed to be dissolved. Map 4, lots 6 to 8. The applicant is represented by Paul Gadbois, PE, with Paul P. Gadbois Engineering. I'd like the planning department to kick this off, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. This is the first time this application has come before the
Oh,
board.
Damon, can you help me get this thing set up? Got an IT guy here or something? I'm sorry.
Helping that out. The review is based on an 8-lot subdivision that's been proposed. So it'd be a subdivision site plan and a private way, and it's off County Road. As was stated, this is currently under a contract zone, which they would like to go in front of the town council to dissolve. It hasn't been done yet, but that's their idea moving forward. So the underlying zoning would be South Gorham Commercial Corridor. The property has some wetlands, forest, and some relatively open, flat grassland that's sort of a mixture on the property. They are proposing individual wells and septic systems on site. They're proposing right now conventional subdivision layout. So there's no open space clustering type subdivision or kind of a normal cut the lots up subdivision. It is in conformance with the comprehensive plan because the area has already been rezoned to meet the comprehensive plan. The zoning allows for 1- and 2-family dwellings as part of a mixed-use development only. So that is something that they are proposing at this time. They would want to, in order to meet the zoning ordinance requirements for this district, it requires a master site plan, which is similar to what you saw for the golf course property. That was the first thing that came out of the gate. In this case, they want to do a preliminary discussion and kind of gauge where your interest is, and then they'll come in with the master site plan in conformance with the ordinance. Oh, let's see, any other highlights? Nothing that stands out. That's just general information for you. With that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction. Mr. Gadbois, you
Yes.
have the floor.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I prepared the plan that you see in front of you this evening for John D. John D. is here. He's the owner of the property. As Carol said, the property is currently under a contract zone. We wish to demolish that contract zone and bring it back to the underlying zone, which is the South Gorham Commercial Corridor District, which allows multi-use developments in that zone. At this time, I think the most important thing is to address the block standards, which I'm a little bit confused as to exactly how to address the block standards. The project you see in front of you right now just shows a road coming in meeting the private way specifications and with lots located directly off that road. If you give me 1 second, I'd like to go show you something that possibly might meet the block standard requirements, because I guess that's something I don't really, sorry, trying to exit out of this thing here. Sorry.
F11.
Huh?
Or escape.
I can't see the work. I'm sorry.
That's when it's plugged into this thing, it can have issues.
Maybe I should use a mouse.
Damon, perhaps you should just hang out there, maybe? Just kidding.
I'm sorry. This is the first time.
Please,
this
my
is the- this is the
granddaughter would
first
be showing
time-
me what to do.
First time I've ever done this.
You're doing a
So here's
fine
another
job.
plan that I just developed because I'm still trying to figure out the block standards. I know it's a 1,600-foot perimeter. I know you want 2 rows of buildings between the roads. So for this site, it's such a narrow site, and with the wetlands constricted, I really have an option of just 1 road and all the lots coming off that road. So I came in off of County Road with a main road and did a 9-degree left turn with another road off that road. And is that what you're looking for block standards, that type of a development, or would you looking at the other one that I showed, which is basically curved road meeting private way standards? So I guess that's the first question I kind of need to figure out, because it's very important to get the sketch plan correct before I move forward to any engineering. So that works for me. I don't really have an issue with that. It's a little bit more pavement, which makes a 90-degree turn to access some of the lots. Gives me a little bit more road frontage, so my lots are a little wider.
Yeah, I'd love to get the engineer opinion on this. Curved road seems to me to make more sense. A 90-degree doesn't
Well,
seem
that's
to
what I
make a lot of
thought,
sense in such a short space, but I don't know if there are other issues.
From a design standpoint, either one of them works. I think the second one with the two roads coming in at 90 degrees perpendicular to one another is really just a function of meeting the block standard in the...
Because it's supposed to be a block.
Yeah, because they define what that block standard is and the lengths that I will say, from this is a smaller site that doesn't necessarily have connectivity to other sites, so the block standard is applied here seems a little, I don't want to call it
restrictive.
Sure, and you can have blocks that aren't perfectly square. I mean, that
What we need to
happens as well.
do is review both against the ordinance. If there is a waiver allowed within the zoning ordinance, then the planning board could waive certain elements of it. If there's not, the remedy is to go to the Board of Appeals to appeal, because it's in the zoning ordinance, which, it's very specific who you can appeal to. So we'll have to take a look at what it says in that specific section.
Okay, and can I follow up on that? And just give me a moment.
Of course.
If the finding is that you would have to, that the block standard would have to apply, let's take that out to another discussion at some point, because maybe we need to look at that standard to see is there a minimum applicable, does a site have to meet a certain size requirement before the block standard kicks in? Just so we don't have to revisit this again down the road.
Certainly.
Yeah, I don't want to delay this one, but it might.
Sure, I mean, I've lived in communities that have blocks, but they're not square blocks also. So just because it's not a square road or a 90-degree road doesn't mean that doesn't meet a block standard, but I don't know how our code is written, so.
It doesn't have specifics in it. I don't believe it says it has to be a 90-degree road.
Right.
I don't think it's that specific.
So it sounds like there's some flexibility. We just have to, get with the town to talk about it.
And like I said, I could probably go either way. I just thought that seemed to fit the site a little bit nicer. It's less pavement, less road. Reading that block standard really confused me quite a bit. And I understand that Carol said that that's probably not a waivable item because it's in the zoning ordinance, not in the subdivision and or site plan review ordinance. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out which direction I really need to go in before I move forward with the septic system and engineering and all that stuff. But I think that we can hold that off till later and we can review that and that'd be fine.
My other question, I guess, because from my reading of the map and the surrounding properties, it doesn't look like this has got a lot of possibility for future development that would be connecting to this road system. So that would be another consideration, right? If there was maybe a future development in one of the connecting properties that we'd want to connect to this road, then that would be another consideration, right? About if we wanted a T or whatever we wanted to.
That's true.
But to your point, if those conditions don't exist, then does the block standard really make sense in a lot this size? I don't know. Mr. Franklin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Frank, I was zoning out. Thank you. Please.
You were not zoning out. You were deep in thought. Staff question. This is a sketch plan review. Historically, how rigorously must when things go forward, how rigorously must they adhere to this initial sketch plan in terms of things, where things are?
This is completely for feedback, and they don't have to adhere to it at all. We've had a couple of developments come in front of the board with a sketch plan, and we've been through this exact same conversation with road design. We've sat with them and combed through the ordinance, literally line by line, in order for them to redesign the project. And Roby Street was one, the golf course was another one. So, it's a matter of staff sitting down and literally going through the ordinance and explaining some things and looking at realities in terms of, is there a cavern next door you're not going to really want to put a road next to? But there's definitely an element of sitting down with folks and going through this, because the ordinance is prescriptive.
So if the proposal meets all the criteria for best use of the land and all that stuff, then does it really matter tonight which one we approve, whether it be the curved one or the right angle one? Does it really matter if everything else is good?
You're not necessarily approving anything.
Right.
The discussion is telling them where to go. Really? It's the discussion that's telling them maybe there is no way forward at the moment. The two designs may work, but do they meet the ordinance entirely? Maybe, maybe not.
Okay, and that will be addressed at a preliminary subdivision. Is it a subdivision?
It would be,
Yes.
yes.
A preliminary subdivision.
Well, my issue is obviously the sketch plan is the most important part of the entire project. So if I'm going with my project using that design, that's going to dictate where I do my soil test bits, how I start working on my grading plans, my roads, and normally an application isn't complete until I do a serious amount of work. So it's important for me to have an idea of which direction I'm going in to move to that next level. And so the biggest thing is it going to be a block type subdivision, or is it going to be the private road with a centerline curve subdivision? I don't need to know it now, and I think we can work through that, but
I'll give you my 2 cents. My career was in design and engineering, so a radius is going to be a lot easier to remove snow rather than a 90-degree angle, number one. Number two, if you're asking us what we like, it may be very costly. So
I get it.
I mean,
But I mean,
there's more asphalt in it. I'm not sure, but we want to avoid places where dead end. So you have parking here. It's easy for me to.
Correct.
On this far right-hand side, it looks like 5 or 6 parking spots. Looks like you can remove snow there. I'm thinking of winter because snow removal is always an issue. I like the end of the radius going all the way down. It looks like you have a 26-foot
wide road.
Foot 3, 26 foot 4. So move snow down there. You're showing vehicles on the road. Interesting. We don't see that often. I haven't. And I guess the planning department, as Carol has said, you're going line by line by line by line. I don't see the block design in my package. What I see is this radius. So if you're asking me, I like this. I think this is a more intuitive layout. That's my 2 cents.
Perfect.
And that means nothing.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from anyone else on the board, please.
Yeah, I too do like the layout and the design as presented. But I do have a question. Chuck, it looks like you had a comment about the parking spaces. Could you expound on that, please?
Yes, so we met with the proposer a couple weeks back, and one of the items we were discussing was the on-street parking versus off-street parking. And this layout seemed to work fine. My only comment was the way it was shown, the property lines were bisecting those parking spaces, which actually put the parking spaces in the front setback, which is not allowed in the performance standard. So we had discussed, and likely the next iteration will show.
Correct.
That property
Okay.
line is
see.
extending to the end of the.
So it's been addressed already.
I realize
Very
the
good.
ordinance would prefer on-street parking, and I actually think it's a great idea. Can save on pavement again. I tried that, I had parking on both sides of the roads. I didn't really like it. I don't think I would like it if I lived there where I have to park on the side of the road, and I'd rather be off the road. So this is a latest revision that I did, and I knew that was coming in the front setback. But I have a 60-foot right-of-way, so I can shift the right-of-way over, put the entire parking within the right-of-way so that it wouldn't be in the front setback, because no parking is allowed within any of the setback lines, front, side, and/or rear. So I can renegotiate that and have parking in front of the unit, still have parkings on the side of the road for guests, because really, there's 2 parking spaces per unit, that's required by code. But you know, you have somebody visit, then eventually you have a kid, he has a car. So we're gonna need a little extra, more than 2 in my opinion. They can park on the side of the road where I'm showing right now as far as parking. So I think I can address parking. I don't really want to go to the rear of the buildings because that's another option where you'd like to see parking in the rear. It ruins the backyards. It's more pavement. That's where my septic systems want to go. I'm not even sure yet. I got to get test bits and septic system data to see where it's going to fit. I would prefer to have the parking in front of the units and the backyards being natural, so I overlooking the back decks of the property. So that's the route I'm going in. My only other basic issue is the setback requirements. From County Road, it says 30-foot minimum, 50-foot maximum. So I'm showing these 2 commercial buildings, well, the commercial building lot 2, 50 feet from County Road. But it also says in the ordinance 20-foot maximum setback from the internal drive.
If you don't mind, I respect you. You're designing this as we're talking here, and there
No,
was
I've
other
already-
business this evening. No, just, you can continue this discussion with planning, but you're bringing up some great things, and you're trying to design it as we're talking here this evening. So if you don't mind,
Okay.
I mean.
Yeah, that's
anyone
fine with
else?
me.
Mr. Walsh?
No, I have a point back on parking. I just wanted to express a opinion on a parking issue. So when you're talking about the on-street parking, I would prefer to see a designated overflow or parking spaces for visitors. Just again, our chairman's been talking a lot about snow removal as being a snow removal coordinator for a private street. On-street parking is I'm not going to say what it is, but it's not very good. So my recommendation, and I know it's a cost issue, is put in some overflow parking, possibly where those cars are shown, you could knock in a couple spaces.
I disagree. We are required 2 parking spaces per unit, so I have 4 parking spaces in front of those units right now, so I don't need any on-street parking. I don't need any on-street parking. I'm just saying.
No, I'm talking for visitors.
Yeah, no, I don't need on-street parking for visitors. I need 2 parking spaces per unit. I'm showing 4 parking spaces in front of the units, so I don't need any parking on the road. I am making this road a little bit wider than it needs to be because I think there should be some on-street parking for that type of use, but I'm not required to have it.
I understand. I'm just
No, I
expressing
get
my
it.
opinion.
Just, I'm just trying to move things along. It was a discussion. Anything else? Anything positive? It's a really good layout. I think you got some work here, and I think the owner, I think this gentleman's done a good job so far. This is my opinion.
And I'll be glad to just answer any more questions. I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I will revert back to the planning department and then work out details with them.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again.
I hope so.
How we doing, folks? Any reason to take a break? Looking up at Ben. Okay. Our monitors are off, but I think we're still live. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm moving along to item 5, discussion, subdivision and private way amendment, J. Brown Investments LLC, Bramblewood Estates subdivision. A request to amend an approved subdivision plan to convey a portion to the abutting landowner to allow construction of an access road. The applicant is represented by Daniel Riley, PE, with Sebago Techniques. I look to planning to please help me with this.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So what is before you on this item is a proposal to, it's relatively modest in scope, and the proposal is to allow the connection of road to the approved Roby subdivision, Phase 1. The design details were included in that subdivision plan for the road. There are, however, because this portion of the road is on an abutting parcel, it needs to be reviewed and secure approval from the planning board for construction to take place. It's been reviewed by the town's peer review engineer and staff. There were some engineering changes that are recommended, comments that should be addressed. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Some of the comments were talking about the granite benchmarks and things like that. I mean, is that our purview? I mean, we have to be done.
It is in the ordinance, so they have to do it. And if it's an outstanding issue, it's one of those things that get encompassed in the condition of approval, which is normally number 2, but I'll double check it.
Sure. Well, Wright Pierce has mentioned it seems to be missing. Well, okay. Missing in life or missing on the drawing?
On the drawing.
On the drawing. Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name's Dan Riley. I'm an engineer with Sebago Technics, and I'm here on behalf of J. Brown Investments to discuss and request approval for the amended Bramblewood subdivision. As you said in your packet, the genesis of this was the approved Roby Street subdivision, which abuts this project to the north, included a road connection through Bramblewood Drive to connect through to the end of it. There was a condition of approval on the Roby subdivision that required an amended subdivision application to identify the land that'll be conveyed to KV Enterprises for that purpose. And so the only revision on the plan, or that we're requesting, is that. It's about 2,600 square feet. It's at the north corner here. It identifies that so the plan can be amended, recorded, and then the land can be conveyed. We did meet with staff last week to talk about the plan, and we have the comments from the peer review engineer. We can certainly address those. I think in general, there was a request to add a stop bar at the end of the road to relocate or to show on the plan an existing traffic sign that we would relocate. And then the comments from the peer reviewer noted regarding the monuments. And I would just say that what the discrepancy is, there were some plans shown on a former recorded plan that we did not find in the field. And so where there was a monument that had been indicated to be set that has not yet been set, we've shown it as proposed on our plan. So that when the subdivision approved, we have to add 2 monuments because of the new right-of-way, and we would set any remaining corner pins that weren't located in the field during our survey.
You're going to fix the errors.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Well, obviously it wasn't finished. I mean,
omissions.
So thank you for taking that on. It's as straightforward as it can be for me, but it's my purview. So, any questions from the members of the board?
One very simple question.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
And this may not be pertinent to them, but when everything's completed and this road connects into the new subdivision, the hammerhead turn at the end of Bramblewood will no longer be necessary. Would Bramblewood Estates be allowed to be able to remove that hammerhead?
The question is what? Would they?
There's a hammerhead turn that was required at the end of Bramblewood because it's a dead-end road.
It doesn't exist now.
Yes, it does.
It does.
It does. Yeah. And just, would they be able to remove it? That's my only question. Again, it probably doesn't pertain to you folks.
It's part of the plan, so, and it's there, so it would remain there.
Okay.
Usable or not. That would be an amendment if anybody wanted to amend it in the future.
Yeah, I believe that hammerhead's located in the publicly accepted section of the current terminus of Bramblewoods, publicly accepted road. It's off the site of this application.
Basically in someone's front yard.
I stand corrected. I've gone down to this, on this road, not thinking, considering the hammerhead. I apologize. You're right.
And it's almost like in someone's front yard.
Yeah. I notice a member of the public is here. Would the board like to hear from the, if you would like to address us, please state your name and address for the record.
Probably not.
Hi, I'm Virginia Wilder Cross. I live on Bramblewood. And thank you for allowing me to ask a question. I don't even know where to begin. Yes, that hammerhead is right in the front yard of our neighbors. They probably would love to have that removed, but that's not my issue. When I read through this, it appears to me that many of my questions were answered, by the way, once I looked at the packet, so I appreciated being able to look at that tonight. Right now, the preliminary construction has begun for Roby, so we are already seeing construction trucks going up and down the road. I'm afraid that when we extend this road to finish what they're trying to do there, that the traffic will go even faster. And what we've found with the trucks now is that once they get their truck in gear, they fly down the street. It's been tough this winter because the sidewalk can't be plowed. It can't be cleared. We got little kids going to school and trucks barreling up and down. I'd like the traffic to go slower, and this worries me a little bit that it's just going to add to that street. And once you get going, you're going to go faster. When you talk, I think on page 4, this made me feel a little better that there is discussion about a stop or street sign. That would slow the traffic down. So I'd love that. If it's a T, I think they're proposing a T. It'd be really nice to have a 3-way stop. That would really slow the traffic down where it's a neighborhood full of kids. I'm just concerned, having seen what's happened in the last month and a half on Bramblewood. We're looking for several years of this traffic, and you've been really good. I think you've been really good anyway, answering my neighbors' questions. And when we got the little notice in the mail, and thank you for letting us know that this discussion is here tonight, we got together. And really, our main concern is the speeding on the street and the fact that it's not safe now. I think it'll be even less safe if we don't do something about slowing that traffic down. So thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service to the town. Ladies and gentlemen, this stop sign placement is not noted. Mr. Riley, Mr. Norton, is this a handshaking thing? Can we get this on here?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the plan that was sent in. So no changes have been made, even though we did have this discussion, and we would expect to see the stop bar, stop sign, and the sign placement on the final recorded plan.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that stop sign and the stop bar is on Baxter Lane.
Correct.
On its approach to Bramblewood. It's not a stop sign on Bramblewood. That's what the discussion with the staff was here. And I know we're not here to talk about the Roby Street subdivision, but understanding the comments and concerns with construction traffic, part of that is that this is the connection that's been constructed, but the board will recall, if the public isn't aware of it, that ultimately with the build out of the Roby subdivision, there will be multiple connections to 4 or 5 different streets. Currently, there are only 2 connections. The construction started on White Birch at the north end of the site and here at Bramblewood. So currently, while the construction is going on, those are the 2 connection points. But ultimately, in the build out of the plan that the board approved, there's going to be multiple connections for the side streets here to try to, and I think the discussion with the board was to try to distribute traffic ultimately through the build-out of the project onto multiple locations so that it wouldn't be concentrated at just one spot that may be happening today with the construction just where it is. It just began a few weeks ago.
Sure, thank you. Colonel?
Yeah, so my question to staff is this an issue for the planning board, or is this a public safety issue that gets addressed because it's an existing, it's an existing street, it's part of the plan? We're talking about here, we're considering whether, to approve this transfer of property, right? That's what we're being asked to approve. So is there a way for the public to address the traffic concerns through public safety to address the traffic movement and traffic speed on those roads? Because that to me, that's not what we're considering tonight.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
That is a traffic safety issue that should be looked at by either the police department and/or the Public Works Department, and there are criteria which Chuck can speak to where you can place stop signs. There's a uniform traffic control device code that speaks to that, so they would look at it as a whole.
Yeah. And
so Mr. Deering's comment on here has not been incorporated or has been?
Has been. Mr. Deering's comment was specifically on the Baxter Road.
Correct, correct.
Putting the stop bar there.
So it is not on this drawing, and looking at a project prior to this, we're approving the drawing and the transfer of the property, but that stop sign is not noted on this drawing.
Right, I believe it would be covered under the conditions of approval.
Correct.
Yeah, the small addition of that.
Okay.
But that doesn't address the traffic issues.
Correct, and yes, and if we're familiar with any construction activities, contractors,
if I may,
the people behind the wheel trying to make hay and get up and down.
So if I may offer a comment, having lived in a construction site for 2.5 years since I moved to this town, and on the feeder road, with all the truck traffic starts at 6:30 every morning, it comes down to neighbors contacting the developer, having a good point of contact with the developer, make the phone call, let the developer get after the truck drivers, don't be out there talking to truck drivers. And, keep that communication open. It's critically important. You guys know this. And then get on your truck drivers. Usually only a couple major contractors, and it works. But make the phone calls.
Yeah. I mean, there were young families scattered throughout this area, and we're all very cognizant of that. Anything else from Mr. Riley? Page 17.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
the condition of approval that I spoke of is not listed in the conditions of approval, so we would have you look to add that if you would like.
Add the stop sign.
Would you read that?
Yeah, so we may have used an older version of the standard conditions of approval because this was amending an existing older subdivision plan. So the language we've been using that addresses this well is found in the previous plan that you approved. So it would read, any staff and peer review comments shall be addressed prior to the board chair signing the plans. So we suggest adding that as a condition of approval. And that'll allow the applicant to work with staff to address those staff peer review comments before we give it to you to sign.
That'll be number 19.
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone understand?
Has that been written down as number 19?
Well, we would say motion and
as amended
by Damon.
That's what I wanted to be able to say.
As read by Damon.
As read by Damon, yes,
right,
yes.
Right.
I'll read it again if you'd like.
Yes, read it again, please.
Sure. Any staff and peer review comments shall be addressed prior to the board chair signing the plans.
All right. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Walsh.
Move to grant J. Brown Investments LLC request for Bramblewood Estates subdivision, site plan, and private way amendments as amended by the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continued success with that. Good luck. Continue? Okay, let's go along here. Item 6, a discussion, revisions to abutter notifications, review recommendations from the Planning Board Ordinance Committee for changes to the criteria and processes for abutter notifications. To the Planning Department for kicking this off.
We have worked to review our abutter notification requirements throughout all of our ordinances. You have a recommended letter from the planning board to the town council for them to look through the abutter notification requirements and amend them. That is found on page 2. On pages 3 through 6, you'll find some of the different standards that have been added in here so you can see what other towns have used. There are abutter notification examples on page 7, 8, and 9. As wonderfully illustrated by Mr. Damon. And then you have a recommended motion on page 10 to send that letter to the town council for consideration.
Would you like me to take it over now?
Certainly, thank you, sir.
Usually you say thank you. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, on page 2, there's a draft recommendation letter from the board with my name on it. The only thing I've asked to be edited is to wordsmith something to the effect that says, the planning board has had workshops and public discussion on this matter so that the council understands this just isn't something that we're funneling along. And I'd be more than welcome to have you add some language to this letter as you wish. Please, Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, and thank you. I want to piggyback on that because, obviously the ordinance committee spent a lot of time looking at this. I think maybe this letter needs a little bit, I know you want to keep it short and sweet. I get that. But you might want a little background that, the planning board has heard grumbling about abutter notification. I know the council has, and it won't be new. But I think you may want to put in there why the 500. Right now we use true abutters, where the property lines touch or across the street. But, we're abandoning that and recommending this 500-foot range. Why? We spent a lot of time with that. And in the examples that you drew up, Damon, you have the 300 in there. If that's going to go to the council with the 300 in there, you may want to either have to explain why 300 is there or remove it, because I just don't want to see it confused. And then other question is, will the matrix go with it?
Well, it's your letter. What would you like?
No. That is really complex.
It would be confusing probably.
Yeah. You reached out to other communities and you found that several of them used the 500-foot, which we took a nice look at and decided this is what we really like.
Well said. Are we going to be sending along these hypotheticals? I personally like them as an
Yes,
example.
I like them
However,
very much.
I want them dated, if you don't mind. I'd like to see a date on this, when this is being published.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit crazy about when is this thing being published, so if you don't mind, yes, please,
So
Colonel.
to comment on that, I think going back to the keeping it simple, if we send different examples, I think it gives the town council, maybe they look at it and say, oh, well, here's a 500, here's a 300.
Take out the 300.
Maybe we decide to go a different direction instead of just sending them an example of what our recommendation is, which is the 500 feet.
Right.
You think this is information overload?
I think just the 500 foot is fine, but not the other examples.
That's fine.
Because it maybe sends a message that we're not sure what.
Yeah.
We're giving them options to make a choice.
Exactly.
As opposed to saying, this is our recommendation.
This was our information.
Yes.
Yes, to make a
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah,
informed
because
decision.
the ordinance committee considered 300 feet. We requested Damon to provide us with examples. We kicked around 250 feet, 300 feet, and then 500 feet. And then we settled on 500 feet. So yes, I concur. I think the 300 needs to be removed because it leads to confusion. Just have as we have it now, the direct butters and the 500 feet. And just, this is more a sensitivity question, and you would know better. Your examples are from past projects or examples from within the town. Is that going to stir any pot, or should they just be whitewashed with no, Main Street, Acme Street, we just.
Make the disclaimers larger and font.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Because they're really helpful.
Yeah, one thing to note process-wise too is the planning board will be making a recommendation to the council to take this up. The council may or may not decide to. If they do, just like any other land use ordinance, it would go through the council. First, the council would have a discussion, decide whether to refer it to their ordinance committee or not, or straight back to the planning board. You would look at it again, depending on that, and then have a public hearing. Then it would go back to the council with your recommendations, and they would have to have another public hearing. So there is a fair amount of the usual process that would go through. When that happens, there would be an opportunity to include some of the backup materials and any additional materials that may be requested. So that's where the maps probably would come in. I agree that we're grateful for the surrounding communities, staff for providing this information, but it is a lot of information and may not be all that helpful. So but if it's requested, we could provide it again, depending on what is needed.
Well, I think a lot comes down to how will you sell it. We hear this, we've heard this quite often, that people are not notified, and there's a lot of reasons why people aren't notified, or they think they're not notified, maybe. But, inherently, I think this will be an improvement, and I don't know how much needs to be sold to them, because I'm imagining that the council hears similar rumblings about not being notified about certain projects for various reasons. So I don't know if more justification needs to be written into the letter, but certainly more explanation of the 500 would benefit. The letter would benefit with more explanation of the 500, and maybe just a little bit more background. We chose to do this because we are responding to what we hear from the public in our public hearings.
Good for me.
With respect to presenting the overload to the council, the council asked us to give them a recommendation. I don't think they asked us they said, give us a choice. Let's just give them a recommendation, not a choice.
Thank you. So there was a motion on page 10. Please.
Chair, move to send a letter with recommendations for changes with the recommended additions in language as discussed tonight to the town, about our notifications to the town council for consideration.
Thank you, Colonel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I will just ask to review the letter before, if you don't mind. and I try to do it a little bit quicker. Any other issues, comments? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Just a few more minutes, please, if you don't mind. Tomorrow night, the council will be voting to appoint members to various boards. We're hoping that Mr. Frank and Mr. Walsh will sit with us next month. But it's with deep regret that Mr. Burrows is retiring, and this will be his last meeting sitting with the planning board.
Oh, David.
Back some other time.
I sent you a personal note, hoping, giving you some support.
It's on my bulletin board.
Well, it was quite sincere. When I first was appointed, you were guiding me and helping me right along the way. You've experienced this. You know the drawings, the whole. It's an art into itself, and I sincerely and respectfully appreciate all the work and effort you have put in, especially as our secretary, making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I wish you every success and everything that goes with it.
Thanks. So it's been great being on the board. Change, and with these board members and future board members, it'll keep on becoming a better community.
I
Don't
look
hesitate
forward
to
a reincarnation of you back on the board.
Don't hesitate to hit me at the side of the head if I'm out of line sometimes. But there'll be perhaps an election next month as well. That's all I have. Anything else? Do we have any other business, any other announcements? Mr. Walsh?
There was a meeting of the Economic Development Strategic Plan Steering Committee last week, and I missed it, so I'll have a recap for you next month.
All right, thank you.
And if I may, I just wanted to share with the board, earlier I voted against that project. And I tell you, I guess I was waiting for you to give me a reason, to ask me why, but.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But I just wanted to say, I knew it was going to move forward. That project had so many pitfalls along the way, and the staff spent far too much time on that project than the average project. And I don't think that's right. And I did not want that project moving from this board with unanimous approval. But that was the reason why I was voting against everything on it. Just so it went out of here, not with unanimous approval. I knew it would move forward.
Understood, and I respect and appreciate that. I lament the fact that a big cart was put before a little horse. And that really disturbs me. Yeah. That's a separate issue that the abutters have to take on their own. I regret, but.
Yeah.
Thank you to the planning department. Thank you to the planning department. Thank you to Ben. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Announcement, we've opened up the open space planning effort. There are signs and little kiosks around. You can use a QR code on the signs. Right out front in the lobby here, in the two libraries. We'll have one in the Little Falls rec area by the end of the week. But the maps are out, the surveys are out for people to take. Like I said, the QR code is there. It takes you to the website, same surveys, same maps. But for the people that, like either one, you can have a choice.
And there is paper, stapled paper out there, and you can fill it out.
Stapled paper.
That's
we will
correct.
continually go around, and they're open till the end of April, so that we're trying to get the most people possible. We're going to have a newspaper article written and put in the Gorham Times, and we've did a social media blast so that people are aware of it. So if you would spread the word, and please fill out the survey.
Great.
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Anyone else?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Walsh?
I'll second that.
Ms. Nichols?
You don't know what time it is.
Is there any other reason we want to stay? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ben. Thank you to the planning department. Thank you, Mr. Norton.
Thank you for not
You need me to sign these things.
Can you tell me what time it is?
Yeah. 8:57.
8:57. Thank you very much.